Hilchos Tefillin Perek Sheni, the laws of Tefillin, chapter 2. Yesterday we talked about the ink, the parchment, and the kavanah, the intent that you have to have when you're writing Tefillin. Now we're going to actually get to the writing itself, the actual ktiva. Halacha Aleph says the Rambam, Ketzad kotvin et ha-tefillin. How do we write the Tefillin? Shel Rosh, when it comes to the head Tefillin, kotvin arba parshiyot al arba klafim. We write the 4 portions on 4 different parchments, right? We saw yesterday. This is the one of them, Kadesh. Then we have V'haya. Then we have, this is the Shema, the short one. And V'hayim Shamua. They're all on different pieces, on its own, each one on its own parchment. V'golelin kol echad ve'echad levado. We roll each one on its own. And the Rambam is going to say later, from the end to the beginning. So when you open it, you're opening it right to left. So you go from left to right. U'manichinotan ba'arba batim. And we put them into 4 separate compartments, shehen mechubarin be'or echad, which are really attached as one. Yesterday I showed you the raw samples. We'll bring them again tomorrow. But this is, you see, there's 4 compartments in the actual Shel Rosh. So I fold up this this piece of parchment, this parasha misofol tchilato, and I put it in one of these compartments in the right place. Tomorrow we're going to see where you put them in. Okay. All 4 in the 4 ones.
4 compartments?
Because there's 4 parshiot. Why did we choose these 4?
No. Why can't we do all the parshiot on one?
Because it says the totafot has to be separate signs.
Totafot is the separate?
Totafot, the word totafot means a sign. Mm-hmm. And Rashi says the word totafot is an unusual Hebrew word. Tat in the language of Kitvei means 2, mm-hmm. and pat in the language of Afrique means 2. So we have 2 and 2 equals 4. Okay. It's 4 compartments. In Sanhedrin? Okay, here you go. Nachon. Yeah, it's an African word, yeah. That's for the head. V'shel yad, for the hand tefillin, kotvin ha'arba parshiyot, otan arba parshiyot, you write the same 4 portions, ba'arba dapin, in 4 columns, al klaf echad. But it's on one piece of parchment, 4 separate columns. I have another example here because the commentaries talk about it. If you write it on one, and then you glue it together, and if you can see, this one is, it's not one piece. See over here, it's glued, sewed up. So the Gemara says that it's okay, but the commentaries talk about it. Ideally, you have to write it on one long thing. In the end, if you had to glue it, you have to glue with a very strong type of, a special type of glue, and then it's allowed. But the bottom line is you write it all 4 on one piece of parchment.
By the way, it's the same for Sefer Torah?
So Sefer Torah, it's impossible to have one long piece because there is no parchment that long.
No, but
which part? Oh yeah, well we don't glue it. With the Torah, we actually sew it. There's a way to tefirah. If you look at the Torah, you'll see it. From the back, it's all sewed up. There's stitches. We'll learn about it later in chapter 9, I think. And you roll it like a Torah scroll, also from the end to the beginning. But this time, it's only one. See, this is the Shel Yad Tefillin, just one box, and you're putting in the parchment into the one Tefillin box. Okay. Halacha bet. V'tzarich lihizaher b'parashiyot. You have to be very careful when you write the portions. She'im asa hastuma ptucha, or haptucha stuma paslan. If you made the closed one open or the open one closed, that's disqualified. Okay, we're going to see much later about this in chapter 8, a lot of detail. But the bottom line is, if you look in the Sefer Torah, when you get called to the Torah, you'll see many times some portions begin on the beginning of a line, and some begin in the middle of a line, like this last one over here. And the one that begins in the beginning of a line is called the Parsha Ptucha. According to the Rambam, it's open. Why? Because the last line before it will end with an open space. Stuma means it's closed because it's going to end, the space in the line is closed, and then the Parsha begins in the middle of the line. So every Parsha is either Ptucha or Stuma. In the Tefillin, the first 3, you can see, are Ptuchot. They all begin in the beginning of the line. And the last one is a Stuma. Begins in the middle of the line. So you have to do this correctly. If not, it's disqualified. Ushloshet ha-parashiyot harishonot kulan ptuchot. The Rambam says the first 3 are all open. Open means as though if it were written in the Torah, the space before it would be open, so it begins in the beginning of a line. Uparsha achrona shehi v'hayim shamoa, and the last portion, which is v'hayim shamoa, is stuma, is closed. Closed means that it begins in the middle of the line, and you have to be very careful about that. Halacha Gimel. You have to be careful about the full and the lacking letters. and words. Ad sheyiyu arba'atan ktuvot kemo shehin ktuvot b'sefer Torah habaduk. Till the 4 portions are written exactly like they're written in a Sefer Torah that would be checked. She'im katav hechaser maleh pasul. Because if you wrote a lacking word full, it's disqualified. Ad she'im chak hayeter. Till you erase the extra letter that you added. Ve'im katav hamaleh chaser. If you wrote the full letter as lacking, pasul ve'en lo takana. It's disqualified and you have no way to fix it. What does it mean full and lacking? Many times you know in Hebrew there's the sound cholam, an o. An o can either be with a vav, you add a vav to the word, or it can just be without the vav and there's this little dot on the top, it's also pronounced o. So every time you have such a word, you have to know, do I write it with a vav or without a vav? Same thing for u, the sound that makes an u. Sometimes we have it with a vav, that's the shuruk. Without a vav, it's just called the kubutz. And there's no vav. Also with the chirik, when you have the e sound, sometimes it's just plain, other times you add a yud afterwards. And the same thing with it's more rare, but when you have like uvish arecha, for example, you write with a yud after the sagol. If it's plural. If it's singular, you write it without a yud. So there could be all these different options of missing vavs, extra vavs, with yuds and without yud. And the Rambam is going to give us a list now of all the words in the tefillin that have the vavs and the yud. So I figured to make it easier, I can pass these around. It's halakha Moshe Misinai. It's all received from Moshe on tradition. I have another one. I'm sure there are grammatical reasons for why which one is which, but there's all... Huh? No, it's not freestyle. It's not freestyle. There are ways to write it, and it comes straight from Moshe on Mount Sinai. We don't know necessarily why each one is full and lacking, but here, so we're going to go straight down. Huh? I'm sure there's Kabbalistic reasons, mystical reasons. We're going to be focused on the green and the red right now. The blue is going to come soon, but you can see green is a Malay word. That's a word that has a vav, and red is one that's missing a vav or a yud. Okay, we're going to go in order. The Rambam is going to follow us, and we're just going to say which line we're on. So we're starting on line 1. Halakha Daled, Parsha Rishona, the first portion. Kadesh li kol bechor, the words that says, make holy for me every bechor, maleh. The word bechor has a vav. You see on line 1, the first green box, it has a vav. Next, zachor, remember, also maleh, at the end of the line. End of line 1, you can write it with a vav or without. It has a vav. Bechozek, you go to line 2, you see the first red box over there. It could have had a vav in the middle there, but it's chaser. It's missing the vav. Right. Then you go to 2 words later, hotzi, that's maleh. It's maleh on 2 counts. It has a vav and it has a yud. So it's got both fulls. Yotzim, later on at the end of line 2, the last word there, that's chaser vav. That's missing a vav. Right after the yud, it could have had a vav. There's no vav, but it has a yud at the end. You see there's aleph, yud, mem, it does have that. Then you go to line number 3, yeviacha, that word is maleh. It has a second yud. By the chirik, it's got a yud afterwards. V'ha'emori, on the same line, there's the red box there, where it could have said v'ha'emori with a vav after the mem. There's no vav, it's chaser, it's lacking. But the very next word, 2 words later, v'ha'yevusi, is maleh. Over there you have a vav for the u, yevusi, after the vet. Could have been no vav, there's a vav. La'avotecha, you go to the next red box over there, it's chaser vav. It's missing a vav after the bet. It has a yud after the taf, that's la'avotecha, plural. That yud is there, but the vav is missing. Then we go to line number 4, we see ha'avodah. The word ha'avodah, it's chaser, it's missing the vav in the middle there. Matzot is also chaser. Could have had a vav after the tzaddik, no vav. Hashvi'i, still on line number 4. Hashvi'i is maleh. It's full because after the vet, there's a yud there. This time, the next matzot is maleh. It's got a vav. It's a full word matzot. Then on line number 5, se'or is chaser. The word se'or is missing the vav. Gvulecha is also chaser. It's also missing the vav, the shuruk. Ba'avur, we're still on line 5 at the end. The green box, ba'avur is maleh. That's full because it has a vav after the vet. Le'ot, now we're on line 6, is maleh. It has a vav there. Ulezikaron is also maleh. It's got a vav at the end of the word. Einecha is maleh. It has 2 yuds. But if you want to say einecha, 1 eye, you wouldn't put a second yud. Einecha with a yud there, it means 2 eyes, between your eyes. Torat, the word torat is maleh. It has a vav, the cholam is full. Hotzi acha chaser yud, says the Rambam. It's missing the yud. It has the vav in the beginning, but it's missing the yud. Hachuka, on the last line of the first portion, number 7, hachuka is chaser, and lemoada is maleh. It has the vav, the cholam. Okay, and the same thing applies now to the next portion. Halacha hey parsha shniya. Second portion, we're on line number 8. V'hayaki yeviacha. This time yeviacha is chaser yud. It's missing yud. In the last portion, it had the one. On line number 3, it had a yud. Here it doesn't have a yud. V'la'avotecha, again, is chaser vav. It's missing the vav. On line number 9 now, chamor is chaser. Could have had a vav, there's no vav, it's missing. Bechor is now on line 10. Malay, it has the vav. Bechozek, chaser, also missing a vav. Hotzianu, malay. This one is full on 2 counts. It has a vav and it has a yud. Then, we're on line number 12 now. Vayaharog is chaser. It's missing the vav, the second vav. Bechor, malay. That's a full vav. Mi bechor, this one is chaser, doesn't have a vav. Va'ad bechor, that bechor does have malay, so it's missing and adding and missing. Zoveach, this is the end of line number 12. Chaser vav, also missing a vav after the zayin. Bechol bechor is again malay, it's got a full vav. Leot is also malay. Yadcha is interesting. Katuv behei. It has an extra hey. Typically you write yadcha, yudalid, and then a final chaf. This is yudalid chaf hey. It's unusual spelling. Talmud learns from here, yad keha. We put on tefillin on the weaker hand, which is the left hand for righties, and the right hand for lefties. Ulit totafot. So here you can see I made it half green, half red, right? Because it has the first vav after the tet, but then it's chaser vav tinyana. It's missing the second vav. After the pei, there's no vav. Einecha, again on line 14, is again malay. Bechozek is again chaser, missing the vav. And hotzianu is again malay, has the vav and it has the yud. Now the next paragraph, the portion of Shema. Halacha vav, parasha shlishit, the third portion. So first, before malay chaser, Shema, in the word Shema, ayin shel Shema gdola, dalit shel echad gdola. The ayin of the word Shema and the dalit of the word echad are both very big. You see that in the picture. They're greater than the regular size of the font. Me'odecha, on line number 17, the word me'odecha is chaser. It's missing a vav. Livanecha, though, on line 18, is malay. It's got a yud there. Beveitecha, below yud shniya. Doesn't have the second yud after the taf, because it means in your house, singular, not plural. Uvekumecha, the word uvekumecha is malay. It's on line 19. It's got the vav there after the kuf. Leot is again malay. Yadecha chaser is missing the second yud because it means on one hand, not on two. And here letotafot chaser shnei vavim. It's missing both. In the last portion we had the first one, not the second one. Here there's no vavs at all. Einecha is again malay with the extra yud there at the end. Mizuzot, here you can see I did again red and green because it's missing the first vav after the first zayin, but it has the second vav after the second zayin on line 21. Chaser vav rishona. It's missing the first vav. Beitecha, below yud shniya, doesn't have a second yud because it means your house in the singular, not in the plural. Uvish arecha, though, is malay. It has a yud at the end. It's got an extra yud. And now halacha zayin parsha revi'it, the fourth and final portion, vayayim shamoa. But the word vayayim shamoa itself is chaser. Shamoa could have had a vav after the mem. It's missing the vav. Mitzvotai, the next word there on line 22, bevav achat, only has one vav. Sometimes in the Torah you write mitzvotai with 2 vavs. It's only got 1. Yoreh umal is malay, umal kosher is also malay. Both words, one next to another on line 23, they both have a vav, after the yud and after the kuf. V'tiroshcha, also on line 23, your wine. Chaser vav, it's missing a vav after the resh. Could have had a resh there, a vav there. V'hishtachavitem, this is line 24 now, the long word, and you will bow, malay, it's got the yud there. Yevula, produce, has a vav, malay, it has the full vav. Hatova, now we're on the end, the very end of line 25. The word hatova, chaser, is missing a vav after the tet. Noten, on line 26, chaser, also missing a vav. Otam is also missing a vav. Chaser, on also line 26. And leot is again malay, has a vav. Letotafot, this time it's like the second portion. It's got the first vav, but chaser vav shniya, missing the second vav. Einechem, malay, is full, got both yuds. Otam, this is now on line 27. Chaser is missing the vav. Biveitecha, like the last portion, is below yud shniya, missing a second vav. Uvekumecha is malay, line 27. It has the vav there. Mizuzot, this time, it has both vavs. Malay. See, in the last portion in Shema, missing the first one, has the second one. In Vayayim Shamoa, it's got both vavs. Beitecha, now the last line, 28, is below yud shniya, no second yud. Uvisharecha is malay, it has a yud. La'avotechem is chaser vav, it's missing a vav. It has a yud at the end, but it's missing a vav. Okay, now we're going to go to the blue stuff. Halacha chet. B'tzarich lehizaher b'tagin shel otiyot. You have to be careful with the crowns of the letters. V'hen kemo zaynin zkufot. They're like standing letter zayins. Sheyesh lahem tag. That have a little crown at the top. Kemo she'en ktuvin b'sefer Torah. Like they're written in the Torah scroll. Now, there's a rule that's called shatnez gatz. Shatnez Gatzmi is 7 letters. Shin, Ayin, Tet, Nun, Zayin, Gimel, Tzadik. Those are 7 letters that always have crowns, no matter where they are in a Torah or a Tefillin. And if you look over here, you can see every time there's a Shin, a Tzadik, a Ayin, a Tet, you'll see these little crowns coming up. But then in the Tefillin, there's additional letters that have crowns. Those are the blue ones that I marked off over here. The blue ones are letters that wouldn't usually have a crown, but in the Tefillin they do. The Eluhen, says the Rambam, these are ha'otiyot ha'metuyagot, the crowned letters, sheba arba parshiyot elu, in these 4 portions. Halachat tet, parsha rishona, yesh ba'ot achat bilvat. The first portion has only one unusual crowned letter, vihi mem stuma shel miyamim. It's the closed mem at the end of the word miyamim. You see on line number 7, you see the blue there? On top of the mem, aleha shalosh zenin. You have 3 crowns coming out at the top. Parsha shniya, in the second portion of Hayaki V'yacha, yesh la chamesh otiyot, has 5 crowned letters. The kol achat mehen hey, each one is a hey. V'al kol hey mechamishtan, all of the 5 heys, arba zenin, have 4 zayins. V'hein, and they are hey shel unetana, on line 8, the word unetana, the last hey there has a crown. V'hei rishona, v'hei achrona shel hiksha, the word hiksha on line number 11 has on both heys crowns. V'hei shel vayaharog, on line 12, it's in the middle of the red box there. The Hey Shal Yadcha also has a crown. Okay, that's the 5 letters with crowns in the second portion. Parsha Shlishit, the third portion. Yesh ba chamesh otiyot, 5 letters again with crowns. The Eluhen, and they are the following. Kuf Shal Uvikumecha. The kuf of the word Uvikumecha, Yesh aleh shalosh zenin, has 3 crowns. You can see it on line number 19. The kuf Shal Ukshartam also, Yesh aleh shalosh zenin, has also 3 zayins. The tet pei Shal Letotafot, Al kol ot mishloshtan arba zenin. The tet, and the pei, they all have 4. You can see they get split up on the tet on both branches. You have 2 on top and 2 on the other one. If you look closely, you can see. A regular tet has only 3, all on the left side. In the tefillin, they each have 2 on each branch. I'll call okay. Parsha Reviyit, the 4th and final portion. Yesh ba chamesh otiyot, has 5 letters with crowns again. Pei shel ve'asafta, yesh aleh shalosh zenin. That's on line number 23. V'tav shel ve'asafta, yesh aleha zayin achat. You can see that taf only has 1 crown on the top, at the end of the word. V'tet pei shel letotafot, al kol achat mishloshtan, again, arba zayin. The tet pei on line number 26 has 4 zayins, 4 crowns on each of the letters tet and pei. Kol ha'otiyot ha'metuyagot shesh esrei, total of 16 letters that have crowns. V'im lo asa tagin, if you didn't make the crowns at all, or hosif v'gara bahen, or you added or subtracted, you put crowns or you took away crowns, lo pasal, you did not disqualify it. In fact, today you'll see many tefillin don't have these crowns. They're not considered to be the ultimate level of hidur, but they should ideally have these crowns. Halacha yut, halokech tefillin mimishay no mumche. You come to California, you're looking for a pair of tefillin, you don't know who to buy from. A random Joe is selling on the market, you go on Amazon, you see a guy selling tefillin. Okay, he's not an expert. Tzarich levadkan, you must check them. You can't just buy them on good faith. Lakach mimeno mea ktsitzot. Now, what if you bought 100 pairs of tefillin? You go check each one. It takes forever. Bodek mehen shalosh ktsitzot. What you have to do is you have to check 3 boxes. O shtayim shel rosh v'achat shel yad, either 2 head or 1 hand. O shtayim shel yad v'achat shel rosh, or 2 hand and 1 head. Im mitzam ksherim, you find them to be kosher. Hu chazak ze ha'ish. This man now has a presumption, a chazakah. In Torah law, 3 times is considered a presumption. You found 3 good tefillins, he's good. They're all considered kosher, the rest don't have to be checked. But if you bought them in bunches, each bunch needs its own checking. Each bunch only has to have 3 checked. Same rule, but you have to check each bunch separately. Because if you find bunches, probably the seller is a retailer, he got it from a bunch of people. Sorry, if he's a wholesaler, he got it from a bunch of people before him. Halacha Yud Aleph, halacha that's even relevant till today. Hakotev tefillin b'ktav yado. Person writes tefillin with his own hand, and he was expert, obviously. O shalakchan min hamumche, o mishar adam. Or you bought them from an expert, or from another guy. Ubadkan, and you checked them, they were good. V'hachziran le'oran, and you put them back into the leather. Le'olam eino tzarich levodkan pa'am acheret. The halacha by tefillin is, if you have a knowledge that it's good, and you put it back in the box, you never have to check it again. Even after many years pass by, as long as the covering is intact, didn't get exposed or didn't get damaged, they are in their presumption. We don't have to worry. Maybe a letter got erased, maybe a letter got a hole. Hillel used to say, these tefillin that I wear, they're from my grandfather. I never checked them, I never opened them. So technically, you don't have to check your tefillin. However, if there's reason to think that they got damaged, then of course you have to check them. And nevertheless, the present custom is that we check them at least twice every 7 years. And the Mata Ephraim writes that it's proper for Yireh Shamayim to check his tefillin once a year. The month of Elul, it's a very auspicious month to check your tefillin. So it's coming up soon. So you give your tefillin in to check, and that way you save any problems. The Rebbe would always say, if people had problems physically, spiritually, he would always say, B'dikat tefillin u'mezuzot, check your tefillin and mezuzot, because the Rebbe once wrote that by a Jew, physical and spiritual go hand in hand. So a Jew's physical life is influenced by his spiritual life. I just had a story here. There was an Israeli that moved to town. Now he's back in Israel. But he had a huge problem with his hand. Suddenly he was carrying a tray, and all of a sudden his hand bent, and this pain went up his arm, up to his shoulder, and ruined his nerve. He had to get surgery, the whole thing. He brought us tefillin in to check. The word yadcha was missing. Your hand. It was one of the letters were missing there. There's thousands of stories like this. A person's heart attack. You bring it to the scribe, and he checks for you.